Hello, and welcome back to the Paranormal Podcast. I'm Dan Pasella, co-founder, lead investigator, Orange County, New York, Paranormal, and welcome back, everyone. We took a brief little vacation there for a couple of weeks, so if you've been with us for a while, wondered where we went, we are back for now, and we'll be back in our regular rotation, so thank you for hanging in there with us. If you are new to the proceedings, we are available on every platform that you can download your podcasts on. There's video versions of this available on Facebook and YouTube, but of course all of it is also available on our website, www.orangecountynyparanormal.com. During the last couple weeks hiatus, if you will, it gave me some time to think about a topic that I've actually wanted to talk about for a long time, because we've been doing this a while now, and it's interesting to me that there seem to be a lot of groups that come and go, and not so many that hang around for a long time. And it's interesting, I hate to use the word compete, but we kind of compete for locations with other paranormal groups in the area. But one will pop up for a while and we'll hear about them, and we'll try to book places, and we get to book there too most of the time. But it's, like I said, I hate to use the word compete, but again, we're kind of jockeying for position in the same geographical area. But they come and go, and there's only been a couple that have been around consistently, and I started thinking to myself, how does that happen? Why does that happen? And as I say all the time, there are 10,000 groups that are doing this 10,000 ways. And I mean, I pay close attention to this kind of thing. But if it doesn't take much for you, even if you follow the paranormal community, to see a lot of this. And a lot of times they just fade away. And a lot of times you get the YouTube video of, we're quitting videos, or we've had enough, or it's too much for us, or we're done with the drama, or whatever people do in announcing that they're done investigating the paranormal. And I started thinking to myself, why does that happen? Why do a lot of paranormal groups fail? Why do they fold? And when we first started, I wasn't sure. But after, a lot of years of doing this, we have some pretty solid ideas as to why this happens. And we also have some pretty good ideas on how you, if you are planning on forming a paranormal group or joining a paranormal group, should think about some of these things before doing so. First and foremost, and I truly believe is the reason for the vast majority of instances where groups kind of come and go, is it is a lot of work. A lot of work. More than I ever thought it would be, more than Emily, my co-founder, partner, wife, ever thought it would be. And if you just watch the TV shows, you don't really get that. They don't show a lot of that. But it takes days. It takes forever to do this. And if in the smaller group you are, and if you're not on television, it takes even longer. You watch a show like, Ghost Adventures, for example, and, I don't think Zach's sitting in front of a laptop for 40 hours reviewing footage. That just isn't happening. But 99.9% of paranormal groups aren't that. So it's them. It's doing the investigation. It's prepping the investigation. And then it's reviewing all of it. It is a ton of work. Even before you investigate, scouting locations is a pain. I don't do it. Emily does it in our organization, but it's just a never-ending string of rejections and neglect. If you can't take being rejected, do not start trying to scout out locations. If you're trying to investigate like we are, which is we're a paranormal group, we come in, we want to do an investigation. Group events, that's a whole different thing. I'm talking about scouting locations for private investigations. And for every 100 messages that we send out, we get about 4 responses Two of them saying no thank you, one and the other two either saying they don't do that anymore, or that, yeah, we'd love to have you for $2,000 or something like that. Very few of them come back as actual location. So you do 100 more, you do this, you keep sending out, you keep scouting, you keep looking. And it takes a very, very long time to do. And it can be very frustrating. And you have to have a lot of passion for wanting to do it, to go through with a lot of that frustration. And we've tried it we've tried calling, we've tried snail mail. We did postcards a couple years ago. We sent out 100 or so, got one back. Got about 20 return to senders for haunted locations that apparently don't even exist anymore. And even a couple of, we get some hostile responses too, where people think we're trying to be shysters or cash in or do something like that. And it's just dealing with all of that. It's finding the needle in the haystack for a good location, and having to deal with that frustration. So that's even before any aspects of investigating the paranormal happen, is you have that level of frustration. Doing the investigation is the part everybody enjoys. That's the part you see on TV. It's the part you've read about. It's the part you see on YouTube. Ton of fun. It is a ton of fun. Paranormal investigation is great. But in terms of total time and effort, it's about 10% of the actual investigative process. So the investigation part, nobody, unless you start investigating, decide you hate it. Very few people decide they don't want to do it for the investigation part. Before, it's a pain to scout. After, the review process can be arduous. It can be tedious. And it can be boring. And trust me, nobody has more passion for staring at an 8-hour video of a room where nothing happens. Nobody has more passion for that than I do. But it does get tedious. And when we started talking to owners of locations, when we would get in, they would tell us that one of the reasons they stopped having a lot of groups in is that they would come in, people would investigate, and they'd never hear from them again. They wouldn't see any evidence. They wouldn't get any follow-up. They wouldn't get anything. And I think in a lot of cases that is because the group kind of folded in between the investigation and the review. And it might have had something to do with just how comprehensive and how time-consuming the review is. For a group like us, where we use a lot of cameras, to figure out how long it's going to take to review, it's a simple math problem. If you do a 5-hour investigation, just for simple math, and you use 5 cameras, that's 25 hours of footage. And then, of course, there's another, hour or two of, taking notes, going back, reviewing, debunking, checking it off, classifying it, and all of that. So you're looking at over a day to review evidence. And most people have lives and jobs and don't have 24 straight hours to sit in front of a computer and do that. And a lot of people have varying degrees of interest in doing that, which is why, honestly, I think a lot of groups don't record their investigations because of that, where it's so much easier to review what you get on a digital recorder than it is to sit and watch footage of a camera for 8 hours. It's why a lot of evidence, in my opinion, actually doesn't get reviewed. I think a lot of folks that get into it, they love the investigation part, not so much the work that's adjacent to doing the investigation. So if you don't review it, or you're not interested in reviewing it, or you don't want to go through the process, then there's no publishing that happens either, which those two are connected. Publishing the evidence is part of sharing it, part of showing it, part of proving or not proving that a location might have something going on. And again, you would be surprised when we meet up with owners and managers of locations. It's shocking to us how many of them say, wait, you're going to come back and review this with me? That doesn't usually happen. And I'm like, what? Like, isn't that the point? Isn't that the entire point of having a paranormal investigation done in your property, your business, or whatever? I'll never understand it, but it all goes back to just not wanting to do the work that is adjacent to the investigation. And that's okay. It is. It's okay to not want to do that stuff. But again, you should probably understand just what you're getting into before, so that you go into these locations and don't give the people who own them what they're looking for. You've made it that much harder for the next paranormal group to come in and be taken seriously. And trust me, we've had to do a lot. We've fought a lot of it. And but if you're interested in the investigation part but not so much everything else, my recommendation would be to stick to ghost hunting events that we've talked a lot about, where haunted locations, they sell tickets, sometimes they let you use the equipment, all that. If that's what you love, stick to that, because it's all the other stuff that people who do what we do. And if it's not interesting to you, that's fine. That's fine. But just know what part of the paranormal world that you yourself could be getting the most out of if you just go to these events instead of... And if you're like me and you love all the adjacent work to it, it's the best. But you have to love it, and you have to surround yourself with people who love it too. And that takes me straight to the next point I want to make about paranormal groups and why they struggle to get off the ground or why they fail, is that you get a lot of people together, you're going to have conflicting beliefs and methodologies. I mean, everyone is different. Every single person is different. And remember, and we talk about this a lot on this show, there's no standardization in the paranormal field. So there's no one way to do it. There's no syllabus. There's no one book that says, oh, here's how it's done. So everybody's free to set their own definitions. So when forming a paranormal group or when growing a paranormal organization, it is really important for a group to have people in the group with similar methodologies and beliefs. Not exactly the same, but close enough so that there's no conflict, or at least less conflict. If you have people that are on so far ends of the spectrum, I mean, think about America right now, where we are. Like, the far ends of the spectrum on each side, you put them together, there could be some conflict. But if you have people that are closer to the middle together, there's more give and take. So, using us as an example, because I'm the only group, ours is the only group I've ever been a part of. We're scientific based. So we use equipment. We use cameras. We use recorders exclusively. We're not psychic. We don't use dowsing rods. We don't use Ouija boards. We don't do rituals. We don't do any of that. So when we find people to investigate with us, we pair better with people who want to investigate in a similar way, who want to gather evidence in a similar way. It's also incredibly important that the group of people you surround yourself with in the paranormal field have a similar definition of what acceptable paranormal evidence is. Because we've worked with other groups and we've gotten along with everybody, even if the methodology isn't there. They're great people most of the time. But some folks will find something to be paranormal and another group will look at it and go, what are you talking about? There's not enough there. Or, that's one of my biggest complaints in an earlier episode about why we don't live stream investigations, because if something happens, there's no context, there's no evidence, there's no review process. It happened live, and whatever we think it might be in the moment, we are therefore claiming that it is, and that is not how we investigate. So you want to have people with you who, again, feel the same way. You want to have people with you who have a similar passion and work ethic for the field. You don't want to be a one-person show where, I think back in high school and in elementary school, when you get in a group, there's always that one person who would just do all the work for the group, and the other two people would just, draw. I was always the person who ended up doing all the work. But either way, you don't want that, because that will, that will breed animosity. You want people who are similarly passionate, who have a similar work ethic, who, when involved in the process, they are involved in the process. And not everybody has the same job, but everybody does what they're supposed to do to the best of their ability and how it should be done within the parameters of how the group operates. So if you have this, the autonomy that you can get among a group of people is amazing. Because if you're all pulling on the same rope and looking for the same thing, it's just so much easier that way. You just have to make sure that you yourself are aligned with whomever you're trying to join with, or if you're forming a group yourself, whoever you're trying to get within the group. Some groups are into witchcraft, some groups are into demonology, some groups are into elementals. And that's fine. Not our cup of tea. Somebody who is into that stuff probably would not enjoy investigating with us, because we are not about that. We don't go to locations that are about that. So the conflicting beliefs, just like in every other aspect of life, conflicting beliefs can lead to strife. And, conflicting levels of levity can also do that. Some people are more serious than others. I always say that we as a group, we take what we do very seriously, but we don't take what we do very seriously. And it comes through. If you watch our investigation videos, we're having fun. We're seriously investigating. But there's time for both. Some groups want none of it. Some groups want a dead silence, dead serious, and that's okay. That's okay if that's what you believe is the best way to investigate. I wouldn't fit in well with a group like that. But there are groups who do it. There are groups that are successful doing that. They get good evidence doing that. But again, it's about alignment. The last one, you may find it hard to believe among paranormal people in the field, but there are groups that are not as respectful to the spirits as others. And I'm not talking about provoking. I'm talking about things we say, language, level of crudeness. I've heard some things being asked or said by investigators that I would never say. When we investigate, in the way we operate, we try to treat the spirits the way we would treat somebody we don't necessarily know standing in front of us trying to spark up a conversation. You wouldn't believe some of the questions in the language I've heard from groups we've tried to work with, and it's fine. It works for them. It's not how we operate, but it's fine. But again, I wouldn't fit in well with a group that asks lewd or even rude questions to the spirits. And that's to me, the reason why I wouldn't. It's not necessarily the language. I mean, I live in New York. If you don't curse, you have anger issues. But at the same time, you have to understand the people you're talking to. And, you can't be, I'll use Hyde Hall as an example. The Clark family were one of the richest families in America. They came from the English aristocracy. They don't need me dropping F-bombs to them when I'm trying to talk to them. Just that, it's not going to work. It's not going to be if I was standing in their house talking like that when they were alive, they would probably throw me out. So what are the odds they're going to talk to me now? So and there's so many things that we don't think about when we're either forming groups or joining groups or going to these like paranormal events where you see it all, and stuff that we should think more about, because the more success paranormal groups have, the more we'll be able to push forward the field, and the more respectability the field will gain, and the better the evidence we will get when you get all the people pulling on the same rope in all kinds of investigations. We were talking about passion. Another part of passion is time. life is tough, and most groups don't make money doing this. I'm not sure. I can't even think of a business model other than being on television, how you would make money as a paranormal investigator, unless you were doing readings or things like that. And even then, I can't imagine it'd be enough to make a living unless you were an author or like I said before, on television. So you have a group of any group of people. I don't care how like-minded you are. Not everybody is equally passionate, even though they are passionate. And you have to be careful. We get a lot of emails for people saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you guys about joining. You know, here's what I've done in other groups, another time, and now I'm in a different place. And I'm very clear about how often and how much of things that we do. For example, I know groups, they attend a convention every single weekend. And if they're not going to a convention, they're going to a haunted event or a haunted place or a haunted location or doing something. And that's great. I wish I had the kind of time to do that. We don't. If you follow us on Facebook or on YouTube or on Instagram, we do about 7 to 10 investigations a year. And we, in a dozen or so events because I love them. And that's it. We don't do conventions. We don't do that stuff. We don't travel all over to conventions and events and all that stuff. And the reason we don't is that the time that we have that we can dedicate to the paranormal world, we want to be investigating locations. Is it the best way to do it? No, I think the conventions are a good idea. I think there's a lot of connections that happen, a lot of networking, a lot of things that people meeting people, just like in the business world. It's great. If we had time to do it, we would. But we don't. And not everybody does too. So when people contact us, I'm always very clear. Hey, look, here's the time we dedicate. And that's true for me. It's true for Emily. It's true for Tim and Tracy. It's true for Rhea and Margot. Same way. The people who investigate with us, they have lives too. And there's no requirements. I don't say, oh, you have to do this month. No, that's not it. This is not a job. I don't pay them. And, all I ask is when you can come to an investigation, just put the effort in, put the passion in that they always do, and do what you do. And if you can help, you can help. But the amount of time and energy that people have is always going to differ. And it goes back to what I said before, that you could have one person who is the driving force, and that's not necessarily the best way to do it. It's the old adage of, what is the sound of one hand clapping? And you don't want that because that can breed animosity. So I think a lot of times paranormal groups, maybe they don't fail, but members come in and out because the leadership has a different expectation of time that and how much time you're to give. I've seen on Facebook, I've seen groups actually post a job opening for an investigator. And it's here's what it entails. This. And I look at this and I'm like, for a position that doesn't pay anything, you're asking a lot. And there are a lot of people who will do it. People who love the paranormal field, just like we do. But I find that interesting that, and I can't decide whether I like it or not, that they actually just come right out and post, hey, you want to be with us? Here's what you got to do. Some of them are even here's how much the yearly dues are. That's insane to me. And I'll talk a little bit about that later, and is why I think some things can go amiss too. But yeah, life gets in the way. And, you're talking to someone who just went on a 3-week break on the podcast. Why? Because life gets in the way sometimes. And I love doing this, but life. And nobody in my group, an organization, they were all yeah, life. Because, yeah, life. I think another reason, I don't know so much about paranormal groups, but there are people who kind of become a paranormal group of one, or a paranormal YouTube page where it's 2 people. And that's how Emily and I started, as 2 people, and that's kind of how we still operate in a lot of ways. But everybody gets into it for a different reason. And some want to explore the unknown. Some want to get closer to history. Some want to get on the Travel Channel and be the next Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures or one of the other 4 million shows. It's okay. Whatever your goals are. That's a personal thing. 10,000 groups doing it 10,000 ways for 10,000 reasons. I'm good. I will never question anybody's motivation. But what can happen is that if you don't have enough passion for the actual field itself and your goal is to get famous, it isn't going to happen overnight. And sometimes people move on to other things. You'll see a lot of YouTube channels where it's like, you know, it'll be their description will be something like paranormal investigator, video gamer, explorer, unboxer, etc. Like, wow, you do a little bit of everything for those clicks, don't you? And I when I see that, that's what my uneducated guess is happened, which is, oh, I'm going to be paranormal, and boom, I'll just be on TV because I'm great at this, and it doesn't matter how good you are. You know, the breaks that those folks got to be where they are, and they're very talented, but it ain't happening for 99.9% of us, and for people like me, that's okay. I have a face for radio, so I'm not really worried about it. I didn't get into this to be on television, and a lot of people didn't. But I think when you see some of them come and go really quickly, I think that's what happens there. The goal is something else. It has nothing to do with the paranormal. It has nothing to do with the field itself. It's, hey, this is hot right now, so I'm going to go out and try to get famous doing what's hot right now. And then 3 months later, when they're not, you know, they don't have their own TV contract yet, like, all right, well, let me move over to unboxing videos because that's what's hot right now. And we see it a lot. I don't know much about other fields, but, you know, the paranormal investigator / hiker / you know, video gamer / explorer, that paranormal investigator has to be one of the most common things in the mishmash of things. When a page is like a jack of all trades, it seems like there's always paranormal investigator in there somewhere. So how have the groups that have, you know, made it, you know, been around a long time, how do they do it? How do you avoid being one of the ones that just come and go? I think the answer to that is kind of in some of the things I've already said. But first and foremost, I think it comes from the people themselves. It comes from the idea that you have to treat your paranormal group not as a club, but as a family. And it's not about memberships. It's not about interviewing people. It's not about dues, like I said before. I can't believe groups do that. It's about finding people that you not only share a lot of the things that we've talked about already, but it's also finding about people that you mesh with outside of a haunted location. I'll use our paranormal family again. We enjoy hanging out with everyone who's investigated with us. We love doing stuff with Tim and Tracy outside of the paranormal. We love doing, you know, tours of wine country with Rhea and Margot when we're outside of a haunted location. I think that's the key. I mean, when we're talking to people, when you're growing a paranormal group, would you want to go out to lunch with these people? And if the answer is yes, there's a chance that there's a lot of things in common. Do you talk about anything that isn't the paranormal? Because we do with our folks, and I think I have a feeling a lot of the successful groups do as well, is they have a life outside of it, and they have a relationship with each other that's outside of it. When that relationship is strong, the relationship in the dark basement will also be strong. And that energy and that the feeling of family that comes from that, actually, I also believe gives you a little strength in those situations too. And how we're able to do that, and why, you know, we're so fortunate, is that I would always recommend that groups try to grow as organically as possible. I said before about the almost job posting nature of it, and, you know, and groups inviting people to apply, and like, I'm just imagining what those interviews must sound like. You know, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know, I do a lot of interviewing in my regular job, and I just think it's hilarious, the idea of sitting across somebody and interviewing them. when I meet somebody who wants to tag along with us, who wants to try it, I'm more interested in just a casual conversation with them. But if you grow organically, you don't even have to think about the first thing I said. Because if you're growing organically, it means you liked spending time with each other before you went into the haunted location. Or you met through a haunted location, did the investigation, and then they kind of became part of your life outside of that. And that's how we've grown. Tim and Tracy own Grapevine Farms, one of the most haunted places we've ever been to. We investigate there all the time. We've become friends with them. They've become like family to us. They go to other locations with us. Rhea and Margot are other folks we investigate with a lot. She was the she was the director of the Museum of Wayne County History when we met her. And we were just another group coming in, and then we're like, hey, do you want to investigate with us? It's your place. And she was like, oh, what? Really? Cool. Yeah, can I call my friend? Can I call my girlfriend? Yeah, call her. And they're very good at it. And they've investigated tons of places with us too. And it's because we've grown organically that there's no conflict at all. There just isn't. And that's the best thing. It's hard enough to do all of the things that I talked about earlier that are involved in paranormal investigation. But if you can do it with people that you like, man, it all becomes so much easier. And when you grow organically, teaming up with people who have the same kind of time constraints and the same kind of goals as you do becomes so much easier, because in the normal world, you tend to be drawn to people who are similar to you in a lot of ways. So it's going to happen organically, which is great. That's the thing. And, somebody who wants to investigate every single weekend isn't going to fit in with us. We wouldn't fit in with a group who said, yeah, we'd love to have you, but we investigate every other weekend. And that's it. And there are groups out there, they want to punch Satan in the face every weekend. Some of us want to talk to history. There's 1,000 steps in between. So the more a group aligns, the more a group has similar methodologies and beliefs, you would be surprised how much better the investigations are, how much evidence they get, but most importantly, how long they stick around. And speaking of that paranormal family, we are on the cusp of getting the band back together, so to speak. As I've mentioned before on the show, my wife, Emily, co-founder of Orange County Paranormal, investigator with us, researcher, has been out. She had a hip surgery for a dislocated hip, but she's going to be back in action very soon. And that's good, because now we've been able to book up the summer, and we're going to be able to do more than just get on the podcast and talk about investigations. We're actually going to be able to talk about specific investigations that we're doing in the moment at this time, which is very exciting for me. This coming weekend, we're going to be up in one of our favorite cities, Seneca Falls, New York, to investigate the Historical Society there. We've done this investigation for several years. It is an endlessly fascinating building. At the moment, I'm currently formulating the plan on how we're going to attack it this time. When you do locations multiple times, you kind of have to switch up the attack, so to speak. We're not attacking anything. I just look at it like a chess match, like a battle plan. But can't wait. We're going to be doing an event there in October as well, which we're very excited about. And when those tickets go live, we'll talk about that. But got a great summer of events coming up with, we're going to be helping the staff of Hyde Hall with an investigation in July. We're going to go back to Grapevine Farms again, because that place is endlessly interesting. So we got a lot coming up. We're really excited about the summer, and very excited that Emily is finally back on her feet and able to investigate with us. So that's our update. Looking forward to discussing all of those investigations with you and all of our experiences with you. And please follow along Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, because we do post pictures and videos from these locations as we're there, to kind of give you a flavor of what's coming. And, it's as we prepare to spend a lot of time with our paranormal family over the next few weeks, After all the thinking I've been doing, I do hope that I can take a moment internally to at least appreciate how far we've come, how much we truly enjoy each other, often on the job, and just how amazing the journey is, and how it's made even more amazing when you can surround yourself with amazing people. It's why we've been around as long as we have been. It's why we will continue to be around. We've been so fortunate to avoid it, to avoid all of the issues that we've talked about, and all of the things that groups can do that can lead them to fail. Avoiding all of that is something that is definitely not normal. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Paranormal Podcast.